When I originally started my YouTube channel back in November of 2011, my initial plan was to review Star Wars media and do lore videos, but my channel instead became defined by my Star Wars Versus series, my first entry being Qui-Gon Jinn versus Darth Vader. As of March 22nd, 2022, that video is now 10 years old. Not to overstate my own importance or influence, but there is no question that I played a major role in codifying the Versus video genre, as the majority of Versus creators are emulating either me or the Screw Attack Death Battle series. For myself, my primary influence was Deadliest Warrior, which aired on Spike TV from 2009 to 2011. As an 18-year-old uber-geek, I was right in the target demographic, and despite being well aware of the various historical inaccuracies present in the show, I still have a nostalgic soft spot for it. However, though my format was modeled off of Deadliest Warrior, it's obviously not a one-to-one conversion, as they emphasized different classes of weapons, whereas 9 times in 10 the only weapons I have to discuss are lightsabers. And instead I need to account for defined physical capabilities and force powers. Due to my continuing enthusiasm for lightsaber combat, I placed the martial arts profiles front and center, while devoting only a token effort to profiling their physical capabilities, as I regarded them as mere accessories to lightsaber combat. Antoine Bandelet was the one who suggested opening with physical capabilities, his logic being that they represent the true baseline and are therefore the best starting point. I resisted that notion for far longer than necessary, but I've since conceded the point. He's absolutely right. Though there have been occasional exceptions, for the most part the placement of the force power profiles in the third slot has not changed. The dedicated weaponry profiles, on the other hand, are something that I've since chosen to incorporate into the martial arts profiles, and were ultimately just another expression of my enthusiasm for lightsabers. The most recent change to my format has been my decision to replace the dedicated character biographies with character monologues and quotes, simultaneously saving time while also providing an immediate window into their respective mindsets and philosophies. Moving on to the most obvious and persistent question that has dogged this video: why did I pick characters who were so obviously mismatched? The answer is that, at the time, Qui-Gon Jinn and Darth Vader were the two characters that I felt I had the most comprehensive knowledge and understanding of, and this video was primarily done as an exercise in scripting and formatting. I had actually started scripting Darth Maul vs. Count Dooku earlier, but I was getting bogged down and decided to switch to Jinn vs. Vader as a palate cleanser. A one-sided matchup means that all of the facts are absolutely clear, which allowed me to get back to basics and figure out how to arrange them, ultimately creating the model that Maul vs. Dooku and all of my Versus videos since have followed. Revisiting the video myself in preparation for this, I was expecting an awkward cringe fest, but I was instead surprised by how well the original had held up. Behind the cringy YouTube intro, the amateur hour editing, the terrible audio quality, and the stilted line delivery, was a surprisingly nuanced argument reinforced by strong image choices and a dynamic tribal orchestral score courtesy of the 2003 Battlestar Galactica reboot that has since set the tone for my entire channel. When in doubt, Battlestar or Hallowed Halo. Going through this beat by beat, I regret how sparse my biography for Qui-Gon was, emphasizing his career accolades and failing to mention any of his apprentices or his relationship with Anakin Skywalker. Similarly with Vader, I emphasized his cybernetic refit and his role within the Galactic Empire, failing to mention his activities or apprentices, and making only a token mention of Luke Skywalker. Moving on to the martial arts profiles, though still quite bare bones compared to my later work, I was impressed with how extensive and thorough they were. I didn't merely name-drop their chosen lightsaber forms, but also addressed their training backgrounds, their combat experience, their range of technical skills, while also trying to describe the execution of their fighting styles. However, I do have quibbles with myself. Though I regard most of my specific assessments and appraisals to be accurate, I simply gave my assessments and appraisals without providing examples or citations. Though my image selections did get the point across, they didn't always directly depict or verify what I was actually talking about in the moment, as the selection process was ultimately driven by rule of cool. Otherwise, I overstated Qui-Gon's disadvantages against Count Dooku, failing to account for Dooku's personal knowledge of Jinn and unfairly labeling him as predictable, while obviously bringing up the description of Vader's technique as crisp and unpredictable as a counterpoint. Furthermore, I should have mentioned the traditional Dunmok tactic in relation to Vader's lightsaber skills, not just his Force abilities. Lastly, I know some may prefer my direct and concise conclusion to this section, allowing the profiles to speak for themselves, but I feel that there is enough going on here that I should have gone into more detail. One opponent is not merely better than the other. Moving on to their physical profiles, my assessment of Qui-Gon was incredibly sparse, and the section conclusion only addressed stamina and resiliency, not athletic performance, though my assessment of Vader held up rather nicely. This was after I had acquired Darth Vader a 3D reconstruction log, so I already knew far too much about all the nitty-gritty little details of Vader's cybernetics. Scaling Darth Vader's physical capabilities has always been tricky, and I will admit that I have overstated the benefits of his cybernetic overhaul and dark armor in the past, as Vader does have several anti-feats where combatants far below his own level successfully exploited his weaknesses and came close to killing him. I think it really comes down to Vader's mental state in the moment. When he is free of doubt and channeling the dark side with maximum intensity, he is one of the most terrifying Sith juggernauts in galactic history. But the moment he starts questioning himself, his limbs start getting heavier, his helmet becomes more claustrophobic, and he is reduced to a crippled old man on life support. This brings us naturally to my breakdown of their Force abilities. As with the martial arts profiles, I am pleased with how well these held up. I may not have provided a full dissertation on their training backgrounds, but I did provide relevant details pertaining to their levels of Force power and potential. These days, my Force power catalogs are structured around the 3 branches of study within the Star Wars setting: Control, Sense, and Alter. But at the time, I started with basic, common powers and worked my way towards increasingly advanced and obscure abilities. First, telepathic influence and perception. Second, energy manipulation. Lastly, sorcery and artifact-based powers. I am overall pleased with how thorough my catalogs were. I just wish I had taken the time to discuss more of Jinn's feats, to make up for how slim his power set was compared to Vader's. Being weaker than Darth Vader does not make one a talentless hack, and Jinn is still powerful enough to have a foot in the door. I am of 2 minds about the section conclusion. On the one hand, I am pleased that I didn't just make it about who was more powerful, but I also tried to characterize the differences in their applications, making it a little more philosophical. But on the other hand, I characterized Jedi reverence for the Force as a hindrance, and pretty much stated outright that Sith adepts are automatically superior due to their ruthlessness and aggression. Though Qui-Gon's restraint makes him far less proactive, his opportunism and insight allows him to achieve similar results with far less effort. Finishing off with my profiles of their lightsabers, I am so happy with these. Besides relocating them to the start of the martial arts profiles, all I would do is tweak the writing a little bit, and I wouldn't change anything otherwise. I love lightsaber mechanics, and I'm so sad that they are so rarely relevant due to widespread standardization. I love the idea that every lightsaber is calibrated uniquely, with subtle differences in the handling, cutting power, and dimensions of the blades specific to every weapon. And I wish that the official content creators actually explored this idea instead of going for radical hilt designs that are clearly intended to sell toys. My original verdict for this matchup holds up in the sense that nothing I say is incorrect, but I overstated Vader's supremacy and failed to raise any counterpoints in favor of Jinn. As my comment regarding illusions shows, I did anticipate the criticism about how one-sided this matchup was, but I was expecting it to be aimed in the opposite direction, calling me stupid for propping up Qui-Gon. Obviously, my updated assessment has not changed from the original. Darth Vader is tougher, stronger, better armed, more experienced, and more innately powerful. However, each point comes with a caveat. Vader is tougher and stronger, but Qui-Gon is still physically exceptional despite his age and is more capable of matching Vader's strength than most. Vader is a better armed and more experienced lightsaber duelist, but given Qui-Gon's similarities to Luke Skywalker, he is doing everything right as a swordsman, and he is a veteran of multiple battles with Dark Jedi. Vader is more innately powerful, but his ability to channel the dark side is predicated on his fragile mental state, and Qui-Gon's background with Anakin Skywalker provides him with similar psychological inroads to those Luke enjoyed on board the second Death Star. Given his vaunted insight, I think we can all agree that Qui-Gon is astute enough to figure out exactly who it is that he's fighting. However, though Vader's final battle with Luke Skywalker is a possible analog for a hypothetical confrontation with Qui-Gon Jinn, I also regard it as the least likely. What foils Qui-Gon is his lack of stamina and his lesser degree of force power. Where Galen Marek and Luke Skywalker were at their most ferocious and devastating in the late fight, Jinn would be flagging. Instead, the most likely analog would be Vader's confrontation with Rowan Shrine on Kashyyyk, Qui-Gon's skill and adaptability allowing him to stand his ground and even land some hits, but ultimately being overwhelmed by Vader's strength and power. The possibility that Qui-Gon may leverage his emotional connection to Anakin Skywalker to talk down Darth Vader does exist, but I think he would merely leave Vader with food for thought while souring his moment of triumph with feelings of regret. But be that as it may, I declare Darth Vader the original victor. Anywho, this is just my opinion. Feel free to chime in. This is Jensaarai 1, signing off.